Hi there, thanks so much for coming along and watching this presentation from Conversation. Joe has given me permission to put this on YouTube, to share with camera clubs, to share with people who you feel may really enjoy this. We're at number 11 of his 20 session series, all about Lightroom step by step. We think you will love this. Lots of people do, so please enjoy, have it on us. And if you do enjoy, please do take some time to follow, like, and share on social media. It all makes a huge difference. Conversation is built on recommendations, friendship, and support. There's also almost 300 things on demand that you can watch on the website. Do take a look. Okay, so Joe, thank you very much, and all of those wonderful people who are here today for number 11 of 20. We are past the halfway point, which almost feels like we're on the downhill straight, and that feels quite sad, actually. But thank you so much for this, Joe, and also for those new people who are jumping on at all different points. It's really lovely to have you here. Joe, I shall pass over to you to start this whenever you're ready. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, it's amazing. Look at that, 39 participants in the room. I mean, live. And then we've got other people who haven't been able to make it live and stuff, I mean, halfway through a 20 session series. It's amazing, the staying power. So glad you're all getting something out of it anyway. You all know, but no such thing as a silly question. Ask away in the chat, and please, get as much out of these sessions as you can. I've got the kind of running order up there, so you can see. I think we're on number 11 today. I'm hoping we're on number 11 today, because that's what is in my head today. Yeah, so cropping, resizing, and transforming your images. We've got a whole session on this because it's really important. And I think that cropping is a really overlooked skill and part of the editing and post-production process. So, that's why I put a whole session in this. So we'll look at the crop tool in some detail. We'll also look at resizing images, because very often you need to resize images to particular, formats for club, for instance, and stuff like that. So we'll revisit the export dialog and show you how to resize images, and maybe talk about that in terms of prints as well. And then transforming as well. So this tool in Lightroom to be able to handle keystoning, verticals that aren't straight, this kind of stuff. So there's quite a few tools in Lightroom for handling that kind of stuff, whether it's a wonky horizon or whether it's, walls that aren't straight or whatever. So that's today, if you like, all that stuff. So ask as many questions as you like, and I will move that one off my screen. I was just saying to Mark, we always have a little chat before you all come on. And I was saying to Mark, I've learned something this morning. It's been great. Yeah, because I love it. I love it when I find out new things about Lightroom. So I went on to Google Drive about kind of 15, 20 minutes ago, just to see whether anybody had put any new images up. And there were 9 images that had been uploaded. So when you've then brought those into Lightroom, yeah, they are always up here in the little catalog. So we're in the library module, catalog tab, and that previous import shows you the last images that were imported. Okay, so there they are. There's those 9 images. Yeah. So then if I come down into the Lightroom step-by-step conversation member images, we've got 83 images. Yeah. And what I thought was I wanted to find out where those 9 images were, because we've got 83 images. How do I figure out the 9 images? Yeah. And I was thinking, so down here there is a sort option. Yeah. And it was set to capture time. Now capture time sorts on the time of day that the image was taken. So that image there and that image there were both taken, at 11-ish in the morning or whatever it was, yeah? And then this one's taken at 12 in the morning. Completely different days, different people, different years even. But the capture time is the time, yeah? But there is an option here, and I don't think I've ever used the option off the list. All these other options are available for added order, yeah? So if you click on added order, yeah, then what we've got now is a list of the items that were in the order that they were added into the folder. And if you want the latest ones at the top, you turn the A to Z option. Okay, so now I'm down at the bottom, you see, and I've got my 9 latest images there. These are the ones, yeah. But if I want those at the top, I just click on that, and now it puts them all to the top. So that's just a way of, if you've got images coming in from lots of different places, they're not potentially sorted by file name or something like that, and you want to see the last ones that were added. That's the way to do it. Great, I've got a thumbs up from Gina. I'm off to a good start today. Thank you, Gina. Super. All right. So, as always, I've done a handout. I'll just give you a quick idea of what's in the handout. Okay, so step by step 11 is transforming, cropping, and resizing. Okay, so we've got quite a bit of detail on crop tool, on the transform process, and on resizing your images for print or web. So all just going through all the tips and tricks, all the shortcuts, and the ratios and stuff like that. Okay, so that's just so that that's there, and then there's a load of links to other articles about doing all this stuff as well. So Mark has that, if anybody wants that.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in here. Claire, I wouldn't usually do this, but I'm just going to mention what Claire's just said. Claire's just said the new format of the handout is so much clearer, and I wanted to say thanks to Joe, because Joe is, Joe constantly looks for things to improve and constantly sees where things could be done better. And I know Joe, with this new format, emailed me and said, I really like this new layout, and I do as well. So Claire, thanks very much for letting us know about this. We both felt it was much nicer, much, much nicer. Thanks very much, though.
Yeah, I mean, my process for doing those handouts is that I don't kind of sit down and spend kind of 3 days writing it. I actually use a number of different AI tools. And I do a lot of research and a lot of work into AI and training on AI and stuff like that. So I use, at the moment, I'm using Google Gemini's deep research tool. And I ask it to give me a guide to the subjects that we're going to cover. And it goes off and it does all this kind of research and puts a guide together. And then that guide then is dropped into Google, a Google Doc. And then I edit that guide and I add bits to it, and I take bits out that, aren't particularly relevant, and I add some screenshots in and stuff like that. So generally, that pulls together something that's reasonably comprehensive, I think. And hopefully is useful for those of you that go for the written stuff. And I mean, the reason that we do this, and the reason that quite a number, I think, of Mark's kind of presenters do this, is that we know that it's very important to offer multiple means of engaging with the material. And listening to a video is great, yeah, but coming on a live session and asking questions is another way of interacting and getting kind of more out of the session. But some people want to then read the stuff and process it that way. Yeah. And then some people want to take the video recording quietly and, pause it as they go through and try it on their own machine. So there's loads of different ways of interacting with the material from Conversation. And the handouts is just kind of playing to some people's preference for reading material, written material rather than the video stuff. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that, Mark? I mean, from an education point.
Yeah, well, the other thing that sorry, I know I'm taking you off at a tangent here, but the other thing that we've had feedback on as well are actually the AI generated notes that are provided free, and we put those on the Learn page as well, because actually, it is right for that multimodal approach. There are lots of people who go on there, see the quick things that we've looked at and are able to identify. And I know 2 people emailed me to say that they're keeping a catalogue of everything from those AI notes, as well as a searchable method of sort of quickly indexing. So, there are 3 or 4 different ways you can engage with these, but it's all based on what people have said that they really enjoy. So keep the ideas coming, really. Yeah, keep the ideas coming. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, and Jill's followed up on with a couple of points there as well, so that's fine. Okay, great. I've got a question from Linda. When cropping, there's a loss of pixels. There is, yes. Okay, all right. Well, we'll address that as we go through, Linda, because obviously, fundamentally, cropping is losing pixels. So, I mean, let's start. Okay, so here's a great example. Okay, of kind of a picture that probably needs a crop. because if you'd got close enough to this bird that, you'd been able to fill the frame with it, you would probably have flown away. Okay, so let's go into D for develop. Now, the crop tool shortcut key is not C. I know it should be, but it isn't. It's R. Okay, so to get into the crop tool, and this is the crop tool icon up here on the right hand side. Okay, so you can either click on that or just press the R key, and that gets you into crop. And if I go back to the grid view, yeah, and we know we're going to go straight into crop. Yeah, I can press R for crop now, and it puts me into the crop tool in develop. So you don't have to kind of click on develop or click on D and then go into the crop tool. You can just press the R key and it'll take you straight in. Okay, great. I can see there's lots of people throwing in questions and suggestions. So Mark, you can curate that for a little while, and I'll just focus on this to start with. The crop tool has got lots of capabilities. So let's just go around. Let's just go around what's on here. Okay. Now the aspect tool. Okay. This gives you a little cursor like this, and now you can draw a square or a rectangle. You see, and that's a free crop at the moment. Okay. So I could do that, and that starts to bring my crop into, the ratio that I want. If we put the lock on that, yeah, now as I move the square or the rectangle, it stays in the same ratio. Okay, so that lock, if it's unlocked, you've got the capability of what we call free cropping. Okay, so you can move things around and get it to whatever you want. But if that is locked, it fixes the ratio at whatever you've got. Okay, so that's useful. So we might kind of think, well, we're going to kind of do something maybe like this, yeah, and whatever, and this might seem to be a very logical way of going about your cropping, yeah, because now you can crop it, and it's perfectly cropped to the bird, okay, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. But when you are cropping, let me go back into the crop tool, R for crop, and you get to something that looks about right, like this. Yeah. Then what I would recommend that you do is I would go up to where it now says custom, because the custom is showing you that it is free cropped. Okay. And what I do, and as you become more experienced in cropping, your eye will look at that crop and will say, that's almost a 10x8 crop. Okay, so these crops here, these are standard crops. So 1 by 1 is a square crop. Okay, so these are ratios. One on the width, 1 on the height. It doesn't matter what the width and height is, it's 1 by 1. 4 by 5 or 8 by 10. Okay, now watch what happens to this crop rectangle when I choose 4 by 5, 8 by 10. It's going to change, but not much, because we're almost there, I reckon. Okay. You see, just went in a tiny little bit, didn't it? So we were almost at 8 by 10. So that is a standard crop, and it's advisable most of the time to stay with a standard crop, because the standard crops go into frames. Yeah. If you've got a non-standard crop and you try and put it in a frame, the frame mat or mount is going to cover some of it, or you're going to have to cut, the sides down or whatever to fit that 8 by 10 frame or whatever. So far better to kind of, in general, standardize around the standard crops, because then you never know later when you're going to need to use this. Yeah. Maybe this, in 6 months' time or a year's time or whatever, Mark says, right, we're going to do a session on panels. Okay. And he says, right, they're going to be 8 by 10 portrait panels. Okay. And you can have 5 images in your panel or whatever. So you've now got to go and find all your 8 by 10s or whatever. And if you've free cropped, then you've got to go and you've got to go and redo, work and stuff like that. Whereas, if you want to find all your 8x10s, then you've already done the work, and they're ready to kind of go in a panel, or they're ready to go in a frame, or whatever it is. So let's just have a look at these. So 1x1 is your square. 8x10 or 4x5. Now it's gone landscape. Look at that. Yeah. So how do we flip that around so that it's vertical rather than landscape? Yeah. X. The X key switches between vertical and landscape. Okay. I think we can search by crop in the metadata, Jill. I'm pretty sure we can, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. Okay, so just hold that thought. Okay, so that's 8x10 or 4x5. They're the same thing. You see, 2 4s is 8, 2 5s is 10. So they're the same ratio. 8x5 times 11 isn't very different to 8x10. You see that it just gets a little bit longer on the long axis. Yeah, and then what have we got? 5x7. And 4x6, so we're kind of getting thinner and thinner and thinner as we go through those things. Yeah, we all have our preferences. I mean, I just love 8x10. I think it's a very classic kind of ratio. I find it quite a calming ratio. I don't know why that is, but I suppose I'm so used to seeing, particularly portrait images in 8x10 format, that it's when I see an image in 8x10, like I'm just like calm, it just kind of puts me in that right place. Whereas if it's just not quite there, there's that cognitive dissonance that kind of comes in a little bit. Yeah. So that's that. Okay. All right. Now, if we go down to custom, let's say that you've got a special frame that you've bought or whatever, and I don't know, it's 40 inches wide by 10 inches high. Okay, well, that would be a 4x1 crop. Yeah. So what we'd put in here would be 4x1, and that would give us a 4 long by 1 high crop. Okay, and now we could open that up, and we could pop our bird in, maybe on the third line or whatever. Yeah, and that would be the crop at 4x1. Okay, and you see, because it's locked, that is now, whatever I do to it, it's gonna be at 4x1. All right. If we come down here, the last 5 crops that you've used, custom crops that you've used, are down here. Okay. So if I put another custom crop in, we'll lose 2x1 by 2.97. So let's put another custom crop in and say, let's put 3.5 by 2 in. Okay. Okay. So now there's a different crop. And when we come back into our list, there it is. It's popped in here. So I don't know. I think does it order them in some way? It looks like it maybe orders them in some way. I'm not sure what the ordering is. So that's that. Okay. Okay. So that is that. Now what does auto do? Oh, I don't know. Let's come back into the history and just go back to the start. Okay, and come into crop again. Right, what does auto do? I think auto's an auto straightener, so we'll try that on a wonky image later. It's not an auto crop; it's an auto straightener. Okay, so we need another option for we'll need another photo for the angle shots, but the other crop. So I'm going to go 8x10. I'm going to go X to make it landscape, and then we're going to come in here, and you see you can also just pull that corner, and as you pull the corner, sometimes it'll flip from landscape to portrait orientation and stuff. But if you do that and you can't get it to turn around again, just press the X key. Okay, and that puts you into portrait format, and then there we are. We've got our bird. From a compositional point of view, when we're doing this, remember the things like the rule of thirds line. Now that actually isn't showing the rule of thirds overlay at the moment. You see, they're not quite on the thirds lines. So the overlays that come up pretty much automatically when you do a crop, you can cycle through all the different overlays in the crop tool using the O key, O for overlay. And you keep pressing the O key, and you see we go through all these different overlays. Now there's the thirds line overlay. Okay, so if I keep pressing O, I'm getting all these different ones. So maybe, this one we're not going to put on a thirds line. Maybe we want it in the middle. Well, then this is quite good because this is one of those middle orientation images, sets of crop lines that can make that quite useful. If I press O again, we get this one. Yeah. So let's say you're doing something like a round flower, and you're going to put a round flower perhaps in a square frame, and you want it bullseye, dead center. Yeah. Well, then you'd use this overlay because now you can absolutely make sure that everything is, spot on, correct. Yeah. Have we got G for grid? Have we got a flower? Have we got a little round flower? Don't know whether nobody's sent me in a little round flower. Look at that. Okay. All right. G for R for crop, rather. Okay. There we go. Now, let's say that with this bird was slightly skew. Yeah. You come outside of the crop line while the crop tool is open, and you see my little cursor changes to a little double-headed arrow. Are you seeing that cursor on the screen through Zoom? Yeah, you are. Great, Mark. Thank you. Now, when you've got that double-headed arrow, if you move your mouse or you swipe on the trackpad or whatever, it rotates the image behind the crop square. Okay, and you've also got this little grid comes up. Now let me just press T for toolbar. Okay, and we can show that tool. We can show this overlay. Yeah, we can turn the overlays off, the O overlay, or you can have it just coming on auto, shows the overlays, I think normally when we're on the screen, but okay, so let's put it back onto O. Yeah, so O cycles through these different overlays, and then if you've got the toolbar open, turning it to never hides them so that you don't see them at all. Okay, so I normally have that on O, but then if you want to use the shortcut key to get rid of the overlay, now you've kind of figured out your crop. The H key toggles it on and off. H for hide. Okay, on and off. Okay, the dog is knocking at the door here. I just need to let her out, otherwise there's going to be an accident.
Yeah, no, absolutely no problems. Thank you. And thank you to those people who have also just asked questions. I didn't realize that cropping would generate so many questions. I thought when we talk about AI, that's when we get all the big questions. But thanks to all that. I think I've got all the questions, but thanks very much to those people who've been so engaged already. Thank you.
Super. Okay. Do you want to fire some of them across, Mark? Or
yeah, I'm happy to fire a couple across now. So let's try and think about something that's relatively linked to this. Give me a second to do so. So Glenda's just asked a question, and they've said that for club projected digital images in competitions, they have to export to 1600 by 1200 pixels. Right. So we've talked about exporting. Is there a way that you can actually set a crop to custom 1600 by 1200? Thanks very much, Glenda.
So let's go into custom. Okay, and let's type in 16 by 12. So I'm just the tab key takes you between those two. Okay, so 16 by 12. The hundreds doesn't matter. Okay, it's the ratio. So you could type in 1600. Okay, if you wanted to, by 1200, but that's the same as 16 by 12. Okay, so there's your 16 by 12, and that's a vertical. And that's a 16 by 12 horizontal. Now, look what it shows you over on the right-hand side.
Well, right? Get your fractions out, haven't you? Yeah.
That's right. The 16 by 12 is 4 by 3. So the ratio is 4 by 3 or 16 by 12. But when you export it, you're going to need to export it. And in the export dialog, we're going to need to put in 1600 pixels to force it to that size. Okay, so let's go through that process then. Okay, so let's crop this so that the bird is, you know, where it should be. Okay, and so we'll take that as the bird. Okay, now I'm not going to edit this for now. Okay, you know, assume we did the edit and it looks good and all the rest of it. Okay, now if we just zoom in a little bit, there's quite a bit of noise in this because we've cropped right down. Yeah, so if we go back to the library module and we show, you see the metadata panel here in the right hand side. Let's show that. And where you've got this little drop down list next to where it says metadata, EXIF and IPTC, that's what I normally have up. Okay, so that shows me most of the information about the image that I want to see. Okay, and now as I scroll down within this metadata, yeah, some of the EXIF information that's stored is the original dimensions of that image. So this is the dimensions out of the camera, yeah, and that's the cropped dimension. And I think somebody asked a question, you know, how do we find out the crop dimension when we've crop?
Yeah, thank you. That was, I'm just trying to think this. Gosh, yes, that was Jackie. Right. Thanks very much, Jackie, as well.
So there we are, Jackie. That's how you find the crop dimension. And I'm not sure. We go back into develop, yeah, and we're in the crop. If we press, if we just hit enter, I think if you press I, yeah. So you see the information now in the top left-hand corner that you get up with I. Look what's showing in the information as well. Okay, so you don't even have to go back into the library module. And the way that you can decide what information is shown when you press that I, 1, 2, 3, those different things, yeah, is up in preferences somewhere. It's up in here somewhere. Settings. Dun, 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 dun. Where is it? Edit. Lightroom Classic. I think it's in the view options, isn't it? Yeah, it's down here somewhere. Let's have a look. Loop. Yeah, here we are. So the loop info. This is the I key information. Okay, and you can see we've got info 1, info 2, and then there's blank. Okay, Willow wants to come back in. So we've got those 3 states, if you like, no information, and then information 1 and information 2. Yeah. So let's have a look and see. So it looks like this is information 2. So let's have a look at loop info 1. Okay, and that's loop info 1. Right. So view. Here's your loop overlay. Here, view options. Right. Now, here's where you set up what information is shown in that top left-hand corner when you press the I key. So at the moment, we've got cropped dimensions chosen there to be shown under there. But I could, you know, if this was something that was important and I wanted this all the time and I'm not bothered about the file and copy name, I can make that the big one. Okay, so we can come down here, give me crop dimensions. Yeah, and then give me, almost certainly there's the original dimensions somewhere here. That's probably, it wouldn't be megapixels, would it? Metering mode, maybe there isn't an original dimensions. Let's try common attributes, something like that. Yeah, and then you could change this and, you know, have something else under there, the capture date and time. Okay. So now you see, as I'm changing these things on here, it's showing you what you're going to get up here as well. So you've got a lot, and if we go back to the defaults, that's the defaults. File name, capture date, crop dimensions. Okay. And then on the second one, you can set different stuff. So very, you know, this is a lot of customization that you can make when you're doing that. So that's information 1, and this is information 2. Okay. So that's how you set that up. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do now then, I get rid of the information. So we would now want to print this. So we've set it, if we go back to the grid, we've set it into 4:3, which is 16:12. But now I need to print this for club. Okay. So now we need to go to the export menu. So we can either in develop, yeah, there's no export button here, but we can right click on the image, yeah, and there's export for us. So this gets us into export, and we can go up here to export. Okay. And that brings up the export dialog. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole export dialog because I think we did that a few sessions ago, didn't we, Matt? Yeah. So let's just scroll down to the stuff that's important for us right now. You need to export in a non-raw format. So most of the time you're going to export to print for JPEG. You're going to export to JPEG and then print it. Yeah, or maybe a TIFF file. Okay. When I'm using JPEG, I always just set it to 100 unless I'm exporting specifically for use maybe on the web, in which case you can save a bit of the file size, which will mean that your web page will load faster by dropping that down to about 70. And you won't see any difference on the web in most cases when you do that. But for printing, you want the maximum kind of quality you can. So keep it up at 100. Okay. But this is the key thing, the image sizing. This is what we're looking at now. Okay. So you've got some options. Now, if you don't do anything, if you leave resize to fit blank so that it's not letting you put any pixels in, this will print out at whatever pixels were showing in the crop. Yeah. So if we just cancel what was the pixel size, it was 1120 by 840. Okay. So that's going to print out, kind of smaller than your 1600 by 1200 because it's not got all those pixels. Okay. So let's go back into export. So in this case, what we want to do is during the export to JPEG process, we want to upsize this image so that it's 1600 pixels by 1200 pixels. So we need to resize. Okay. So why are we? Because it's DNG. Okay. So JPEG. So resize to fit. Now we've got some options. We can specify both width and height. Okay. Or dimensions. Okay. Same kind of thing. We can specify just the long edge. So in this case, we would specify 1600 pixels. And because the long edge is 1600, yeah, it keeps the same ratio. So as it grew the photo to 1600 pixels, the height would end up as 1200. Okay, so let's just try that. Okay, now the resolution is only of importance if you're going to physically print an image. It has no relevance from the point of view of your screen. Okay, but it is important if you're going to print. Okay. Let's make it easy, and let's say that we're going to have a resolution of 300 pixels an inch. So the printer is going to print at 300 pixels. Most of the pro printer labs and things, that's going to be their standard print resolution, 300 pixels an inch. 1600 pixels is going to give me a 5 1/3 inches print. Yeah, because this number divided by 300 pixels per inch gives me the number of inches that this will print wide. Okay. Now, 5 inches wide is not very big. Let's say you want a 10-inch print. Yeah. Well, if you want a 10-inch print, then work backwards. 10 inches times 300 pixels per inch means that I would need the long edge to be 3000 pixels. Yeah. So for printing, you need to kind of do that math. How many pixels per inch? What size print do I want? And that tells you how many pixels you need, yeah, on the different edges. But for just exporting for DPI kind of presentation, yeah, you can ignore the resolution. So in this case, 1600 on the long edge. Yeah. Now we could also say short edge, yeah, and then we could do 1200. because the short edge is going to be 1200. It's going to grow the picture to 1200, and it's going to keep it in the same ratio. So as we keep it in the same ratio, we'll also get 1600. So let's just try that. Okay. So we're going to export this. Where am I going to put this? I better not put it in the Panto folder. Let's put it in a Conversation 11 folder under Print Photos. Okay. So I'm just going to hit the export now. So it'll export a JPEG at this size. Yeah. And in post-processing, I always select that option in post-processing, Show in Finder. Yeah. And on a Windows, that's Show in File Explorer. So what that does is now it's going to export the image, and then it will bring up Finder, and it will show me that image, yeah, on my Mac. Yeah, so you can see it's under Print Photos, Conversation 11, and here it is. And if I scroll down on the right-hand side on a Mac, it shows you a little thumbnail of the picture, yeah, and it shows us that the dimensions of that are 1600 by 1200. Okay. We only specified the 1200, but because of the because of the ratio being 16 by 12, it's given us exactly the right picture. Okay. Has that answered any of the questions that were already up, or has it thrown any more questions?
No, that's actually, I think we've covered at least 3 or 4 questions that were there. So I've been letting those people know. So thank you very much for that. One question that came in from Chris, thanks very much for asking this, Chris, was actually about the lock, about the little padlock. Okay. Because obviously on some of those ratios, it had the lock secured, it was locked in, and others it didn't. So is there a sort of, is it automatically locked when you restart Lightroom, or is it locked on certain ratios, or when is it locked and when is it not, Joe? Do you know?
I don't.
No, I didn't wonder. I wondered either.
Just have to keep an eye on it, and you know, if you want it locked, just lock it. You know, if it's unlocked, just click on it and it locks. Yeah, I don't know what the rationale is of whether it's unlocked or locked and whether it remembers between sessions. I've never figured that one out.
No, there doesn't seem to be a reason for it, does there? It just appears to be.
No, you're plumbing the depths of my ignorance on that one, I'm afraid. Yeah.
And Ruth's just come up and said, is it possible that we could see the resized image to see how pixelated it may be or may not be? Because this also links in with Linda's question earlier about the loss of pixels when we crop in. And a couple of people have asked about the loss of pixels, actually.
Right. So what we just did was we went through that export, didn't we? So let's just go back into export and have a look at the export options that we used. So we exported to a specific folder, but Conversation 11 didn't exist. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it created that folder as when I hit the export button. Do you notice underneath the put in subfolder, there's a checkbox, add to this catalog. Mm-hmm. Now, that by default is turned off. It should always be turned on. And I'll show you why. Because that was turned on, now when I come back into the library module and we have a look in my catalog here, my folders here, okay, if I scroll down to my pictures folder, and under pictures I have my print photos here, so that's the print photos folder. Okay, so let's open that up. And this is where whenever I export anything, it goes into a subfolder in here. Okay, so it was Conversation 11, wasn't it? There it is, Conversation 11. Now, if we'd done that export, but we hadn't checked that add to catalog, the conversation, so in fact, let's do that. Let's export, let's go back into the export and let's do it without, and we'll put it in like a Conversation 12 or something, okay? So, remember images, aren't we? There we are. So let's export this. And let's put it in Conversation 12, which doesn't exist at the moment. And I'm going to take that add to this catalog out. Okay, so there it is. Print photos, Conversation 12, same image. Come back to Lightroom and we have a look under print photos. Conversation 11, Conversation Christmas, no Conversation 12.
No.
Yeah, because you don't have that checkbox checked. it doesn't automatically kind of tell Lightroom that it's in the catalog. Yeah. And this gets a lot of people because they say, I've just exported my image in Lightroom. Why is it not showing up in my folders? Yeah. And that's why. So how would we make it available? Well, there's a couple of ways. We can either just go up to print photos here and right click on print photos and then synchronize the folder. That will reread the print photos folder. And then it will find that it's got this new folder, Conversation 12, and it'll appear. Yeah. Or we can go up all the way to the top to folders, and we can just click on that add button, and we can go and add that folder specifically to Canvas, to the catalog. But I mean, most of the time, what I would do here is just come up to print photos. Yeah, synchronize the folder, and it's going to reread the print photos folder now, and it say, "Oh, I've found 91 new photos." So there's other stuff gone on apart from what we've just done as well. Yeah, so I don't need to do anything else. Just check that box and just say synchronize, and now it will reread the whole of that print photos, all the subfolders, and it will kind of just shake them all down and bring in any new photos that weren't in the print photos subfolders. And if I scroll down to print photos now, what we should see appearing in a set, that is Conversation 12. Yeah, so there's our Conversation 12. Yeah, so
that's
this
so good to know.
Yeah, because it does catch a lot of people. That yeah. Okay, all right. That was a little diversion, Mark, but
yeah, it's okay.
A useful diversion, that one. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think all of this has been incredibly useful, actually. I really do. I think the things that we learn en route to the sort of big objectives are the things that are really rich.
Yeah, cool. Any other questions that came up that we should answer as we go?
I suppose only the one about the loss of pixels. So we've had a couple of queries about losing pixels and about whether there's a way of replacing pixels so the image isn't that much smaller. So, I mean, we can export it in a larger resolution, I suppose. And we've also talked previously about different apps that link up to do that as well, Joe. So I'm interested in your take.
Yeah, Lightroom does a fairly good job when you upsize an image. So, that was smaller than 1600 by 1200. The pixel, so what it's done, it's kind of interpolated a few pixels to grow it from, what was it, 1180 to 1600. It's added a few pixels in. And I mean, that's the 1600 by 1200 image now. If I go to full screen, okay, you can see, I can see the noise. I'm pretty sure you must be able to see the noise. Let me escape and just zoom in a bit further on this. Yeah. So there's a good bit of noise in this image. It's a little bit soft because it was we've zoomed in a long way digitally. We've not really sharpened this. So what you would typically do before you exported an image like this now is you would certainly denoise it to get rid of the noise, but you'd probably also want to sharpen this image. Now you can do that in Lightroom. So let's go back and see whether we can kind of, have a little kind of sharpening of this image or whatever. Member images, G for grid. Here's our original image. So in develop, okay. But now you've got to start thinking about, what do I want to use this image for? Okay, because if I want to put this into a nature competition, there's things I can do and there's things I can't do, because a lot of nature competitions will ban the use of AI tools. And I did a session for the Royal Photographic Society specifically on this subject last week or the week before. When can you use this and when can't you use AI tools and things like that? So you've got to be aware of your competition rules. You've got to be aware of your club rules. What do your club rules say? And also, you might say, well, these two seed pod heads here, I don't want these or whatever. Yeah. Now, cloning, in some cases is acceptable because it's not regarded as an AI tool. But if I go into the generative AI remove tool, and start to kind of want to get rid of these things, then I'm actually using AI. So we've also got to start thinking about the tools and how we use them now. Okay, but what about things like the noise removal then? I don't. So if I go down to the detail tab, we've got some different options here. We can do the denoise this way with the button, and that brings up this enhance tab. Now this is using AI. Okay, so this is AI generated denoise. And you can see we click before and after. Let me zoom in a little bit further on, say, the bird here. Yeah. So it's showing you what it'll look like before and after. You just click on the picture and it'll show you before and after. And I mean, it's going to give you a beautiful, creamy, non-noisy background. But the bird's still a bit soft because you've zoomed in so far. Okay. So Lightroom won't do an AI sharpening at the moment. It does AI denoise, but it doesn't do AI sharpening. And this isn't going to take too long, 10 seconds. Oh yes, of course, I've got my new super fast machine. Yeah, it was 2 minutes before Christmas to do this. Yeah, so if I enhance that image now, it should only take 10 seconds to do, and you see it'll save that as a new DNG file. Okay, so let's see one. What do we? Yeah, boom, there we are. And now if we zoom in to that, yeah, you can see no noise, nice cream image, but it's not that sharp. Okay, so how would we sharpen the image? Well, you can use the old sharpening tools. Okay, here. Okay, so you've got the sharpening. So let's turn sharpening all the way up. Now, let me zoom in on that bird a bit more. Let's just zoom into, say, 200%. Okay. Now, watch what happens when I sharpen. Can you see the difference? Is that coming through on the Zoom screen, that difference? But what I'm sharpening, look what it's also doing to the background. It's bringing out noise again. It's sharp. I'm getting, halos and stuff. And this is too sharp. So what I really want to do is I only want to sharpen the kind of edges in the image. I don't want to sharpen this creamy stuff in the background. Okay. So when you do apply sharpening with the amount slider, yeah, then what you want to do is you want to come down to the masking slider. And this is kind of where sharpening comes into its own. So now as I slide the masking slider, yeah. And if I do this holding the Option key, okay, so hold your Option key on a Mac or Alt key on a Windows down, and now start sliding the masking slider. When it's on the very left-hand edge, it's completely white. Everything is being sharpened when the masking is at 0, okay? So whatever sharpening you apply here, everything in the picture is showing as white when I'm on the masking slider. But now watch what happens as I move the masking slider to the right. It's recognizing the bits of the picture that have got sharp edges. Yeah. So this is the bits that we want to mask. And the bits that haven't got sharp edges, the background and stuff like that, are going black. So I can slide the masking slider and I can eliminate all that background. Yeah, and you see some of the bird as well, because it's really we only really want to sharpen the very edges of the feathers and things like that. Okay, so now we've got a really good mask of the bird. Yeah, so only those bits that are white will have sharpening applied. And this makes a huge difference because it's taken the sharpening off the background and given us all our creamy background back. But we've now got a sharper bird. Yeah. And if we want to see the before and after effect now of the sharpening, just go up to the little eye there on the detail tab and turn it on and off. Yeah, and let's go into, say, 400%. We'll see what difference that's making. Okay, so can you see the before and after? And it's making quite a bit of difference. Now, that sharpening is okay, but it's not as good as Topaz. It's not as good as DxO, but it's what you've got if you've just got Lightroom, and it's not bad. Yeah, and it will give you a slightly better image. Golly, 17 new messages at the bottom of the
I
chat.
know, goodness me, I am so busy. Yeah, I mean, in a good way. I am going to bring up Brian's comment. Sorry to embarrass you, Brian. I hold Joe responsible for me to get a new PC. I got Topaz and then read the hardware requirements. I think I hold Joe responsible for all kinds of expensive things in my life. Many of us do as well. We do have a few sort of queries. I'm just trying to think about things that link to this really easily as well, Joe, because this has been so useful. Jill asked a couple of times actually, and it's a really useful point to ask. Once, when you had it back in the library module, and this picture actually, this is the example. When this picture was in the library module, on the right hand side, you had the metadata, the metadata showing on the right.
Yeah.
Is that always showing on the images when you click on them in the library module, or does that have to be switched on in some way?
No.
Bottom.
The metadata tab, I mean, it's there, and most people don't have it open most of the time, I guess. Okay, but if it's open and you've got EXIF and IPTC selected, what that's doing is reading the information about your photograph, which is stored alongside the photograph in the raw file. So if I click on the dog, it's a different set of, that's Gina's dog there. Yeah, you see that's got different dimensions. It's got different lens and date and time and focal length and all the rest of it. So as we move from image to image, all this information is stored about every image. Yeah. And it's all there and read by that tab.
Super. Thank you. Thank you. And then the only other thing, which I think we mentioned, was one of the very first points actually, was whether there's a method, and there may not be, this may be something we have to go and learn about or try, as to whether there's a method of searching by crop.
Oh, yeah. Right.
That was such an interesting, I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but that's such an interesting query.
Yeah, search by ratio. So if you're in the grid view in the library, okay, you need the library filter open. Yeah. So that's this little bar at the top. So the / key is what shows or hides that library filter, or you can come up to view, show filter bar. All right. So you've got to have that filter bar open. Now, come across, choose your image and come across to metadata. Okay, so let's say we want, these are, I think nobody's sent in anything other than kind of regular portrait and landscape crops here. There's no square crops. So I'll do this on my print photos folder, okay, because there's all kinds of different crops in there. Okay, right, so let's go to metadata. And rather than, label, as a keyword, we can ask to look at any of the other metadata at all. So we could have file type, for instance, and now it'll show me all the different DNG files, TIFF files, JPEG files, or whatever. Well, that's not answering the question. What do we want? We want, I think, down in develop. Right, what have we got here? No, it's not develop. Somewhere in here there
actually was aspect ratio on develop.
Aspect ratio. Was it under?
Yeah, I think, unless I'm wrong.
There we are. Yeah,
there we go. Thank you.
Right. So this gives us portrait, landscape, and square. So just show me all my square images. Okay. And if you click on that, I mean, it's processing 1,200 shots or whatever. Come along.
This is such a great feature, though, Joe, isn't it? In fact, Jill has just said they've used this filter bar so much since we showed it. Yeah, it's become just on my Lightroom library as well.
No, my click isn't working. Let me just quickly come out and start up again. Lightroom,
I'll edit this bit out, but this is because we were saying how great your new computer was, Joe.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely typical. Yeah, that's right. So let's have a look. Willow, leave me alone. I'm in print photos, so we're going to go to metadata. It's loading all the 10,000 images. There we are, and I click on square, and now it's just giving my square images. If I click on landscape, just give it a second to think, because there's 7,000 images, and there's all my landscape images. And notice, you see, that's a landscape image, just the same as that is. Yeah, so the landscape images are longer wide than they are high. And then if I want my portrait images, then I've got my portrait shots, portrait aspect ratio shots. That's not portraits of people. That's different. Okay, this is portrait ratio, but I don't think there's a way of pulling out the actual, the ones that are 1200 pixels. Now, I'm, somebody tell me that we have other options there. I mean, we can look at various things now. Now, develop preset, snapshot, treatment. No, the treatment is different. That's just black and white or color. So, I mean, that may be one that you didn't know about. So you can search and just show all your black and white shots or all your color shots, as well. So that's treatment. But yes, I don't think we can do a search by pixel size, width and height.
But searching by ratio is so useful. Sorry, searching by orientation or ratio is really useful as well.
It is.
It also, I suppose, I know this is a different topic, but it almost shows your sort of bias towards certain images, and I don't mean that in a negative way. But as soon as you clicked on square, we saw lots of street images, and I thought most of my street images are square. That's really interesting. So afterwards, I'm going to go and do this.
And I consciously decided when I started shooting street, because it was back in the day when Instagram was still square only. Yeah. So that was one of my kind of constraints that I put on myself was, right, all my street stuff is going to be square, black and white. And so that's why most of those are square.
Yeah, super. Yeah. Is it scone time, by the way?
It is. It's scone time. But Gina's just put her question and Yvonne answered it. That's the / key, Yvonne, that you put in the chat. Okay. It's the other one. Okay, it's the / key. So on a Mac keyboard, it's the one on the right-hand side, just above the Shift key, and it's the one that's falling backwards so kind of top left to bottom right. Yeah.
Super duper. Thank you very much. What a fantastic morning, by the way, as always. And I will say on record, Joe berated me viciously for not mentioning this session on the weekly roundup. So I'm going to make a video entirely based on how wonderful Joe is.
Oh no!
Today. No. I'm going to put it on Instagram and everywhere. No, I'm joking. But thank you very much.
Yeah, it showed up in my LinkedIn feed of all places, I think.
Oh, did it?
Yeah. So.
Well, we know how great these are, but I do apologize. In that case, Joe, I shall pause the recording now. And we hope you have had a lovely scone and just to make us all feel very jealous.
I didn't quite get it finished, as you can see. But I'll save that bit for later.
Well, you should have said I could have added an extra 2 minutes on. We'd have been fine. But no, thank you very much. Oh, there's Willow. Hey!
Now, leave me alone now, okay? I'm working.
Joe, you obviously can take as long as you want, as usual. Please do continue whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I was looking for one that we could move on to. Have we finished cropping?
Yeah, I think there are no further questions specifically oriented around cropping that I have.
Yeah, it's amazing that we spent a whole hour on cropping, isn't it?
It just shows the depth of the information, though, isn't it? It's really detailed. Thank you.
And I mean, really, all we talked about was the technical aspects of cropping. So maybe as we go through transform and crop and stuff, we just think about as well the kind of the compositional aspects of cropping, because I love crop. I mean, I'm a sucker for a nice wide panoramic crop, because I think it changes the story of the image. And when you're thinking about story, very often there's an old kind of, maxim in any kind of creative endeavor, whether it's painting or writing or, photography or whatever: eliminate, eliminate, eliminate. Yeah. Eliminate everything from your picture that doesn't contribute to the story, whether that's distractions, whether that's dead space, that isn't kind of going to be positive, negative space, if you like, that's part of your story. So cropping allows you to do that after the fact. And I think that, yes, purists would say you should get it right in camera. Yeah. But to be honest, I can't think that fast. And I'm out there, on a walk with everybody or whatever, and people are asking questions, or I'm busy capturing images, and I'm more interested in capturing the image And then I know I can go back later on and apply the square crop or apply a panoramic crop or whatever. And our image kind of machines today, whether those are phones or whether those are cameras, hold so many pixels that you have that capability of throwing away parts of your image and leaving the bits that you want. Like we saw before the break with that bird, we threw away probably 80-90% of the image. You focus in on the bird because the bird is the story. So that's important. I mean, so this image here, the verticals are not straight, not quite. Okay, so this is a prime subject for a transform. It's interesting as well because we're the wrong side of the sign, aren't we? It's the wrong way around. So what I might do here is I might just go into develop with this image and shut down the left-hand panel. Yeah. First thing I might do is I might just rotate this, transform this. Yeah. And this is a different transform. Okay. So there's two transforms in Lightroom. There's keystoning transform, which we'll get onto in a minute. But if you right click on the image and go down here to transform, you can rotate the image 90 degrees left and right, or you can flip it horizontally and vertically. So if I flip this image, yeah, we now see Happy Christmas. Yeah, so that's just a little trick there to bring those things back into. Now, I think the bus is probably now the bus signage is probably now wrong. Yeah, so you see, look, yeah. So even though now we can see Happy Christmas, because I'd transformed the image the other way. If we find that bus now, yeah, we can read the bus now. So one of them's always going to be wrong, but that to me would be the thing that caught my eye. So from that perspective, I would right click, transform, flip vertical, and then I would try fixing this so that the verticals were correct. So on your version of Lightroom, transform is not at the top. It's down here somewhere. Yeah, because that's the default order that the panels occur in Lightroom before you've made any changes. I've moved the transform tab up to the top because it's one of the first things that you should do in your general image processing workflow. How do I move a tab? You go to any of the tabs and just go to the left-hand side of the tab, this gray area here, and just right click. And then you get into customize develop panel. And I think transforms somewhere down here normally. Yeah. So you just grab that little 3-line hamburger and just pull it up to where you want it. So I've pulled it up to the top. Now, if you do that, if you move it and say save, yeah, and you do a move. So let me try moving effects up. Okay, so I'll move effects up above lens blur. It'll normally come up and say, right, you need to relaunch Lightroom. Okay, so at the moment, effects is down here. It's not showing as having moved. Okay, so if I relaunch Lightroom now, yeah, it'll close Lightroom down. It'll fire Lightroom back up, and then we will see that now effects has gone above lens blur. Okay, so it makes that change on startup again. Okay, but you don't get it until you've actually restarted Lightroom. It's lovely being able to restart Lightroom in 5 seconds, Mark.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we're 12-second people over here, Joe.
Oh, really? Yeah, it was getting to kind of 30 or 40 seconds my Lightroom to before I upgraded, so it was a bit of a pain. Okay, so the transform tab, what does it do? It allows you to straighten verticals primarily. There are these 6 buttons here, and you can just hit the auto button and it'll do its best to fix, and it did a pretty good job. Okay, so if we turn it off, look at the vertical lines of the shop on the right-hand side here. They're not straight. They're leaning in like this, and this is very often what you get when you're shooting. And if we use the I key, Yeah, let's have a look what Janet was shooting here. 34mm, okay, 16 to 50mm lens, 34mm, so quite a wide angle lens. And Janet is only kind of between probably 5 and 6 foot tall. Okay, so the camera is up at around about that 5.5, 6 feet off the ground. So as you are looking down the street, yeah, because you're not 20 feet in the air, if you like, the lines of the buildings are going to be coming in at the top. And that's keystoning, and there's kind of nothing you can do about it unless you've got something like a tilt shift lens. But Lightroom gives you the capability of fixing it after the fact. So you come in when you see these non-vertical lines. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with having keystone buildings like this. This is just my OCD kicking in, okay? Yeah, I like this, okay? So, yeah, Alison, I mean, the crop tool will allow you to do that, but it just really allows you to kind of straighten by rotating the image, okay? Which is fine, but it doesn't fix keystoning. So this is where you fix keystoning. Okay, so auto sometimes does a good job, but the one that I normally use is either called guided, or you can just click on this. It's the same thing. Okay, you see guided. When I clicked on that, it highlighted guided. And what guided lets you do is take full control over what should be vertical in the image. So you get your little cross. Now, I've got a loop view showing as well. You can see the square, the little square kind of magnifying glass there. Okay, you turn that loop view on and off with that little checkbox there. If you can't see that at the bottom, what's the shortcut key to bring up the toolbar? Yeah, it's T for toolbar. Okay, and then you need to check that show loop. So now we've got our loop, and what you want to do is just find a vertical line. So you could put your cursor in the middle of the line or on the edge of the line, and then pull down, and you get this white line on the screen. And now go to the bottom, and I chose the very right hand edge of that piece of the building there. So again, just go as far down as you can, and just keep the same thing, okay, and let go. Now that line at the moment isn't vertical, but it's the first one you're saying to Lightroom, when I draw my second line, I want you to make both of those two lines vertical. So now you come across normally to the other side of your image, and you do the same thing. So find a line that you think should be vertical, yeah, or you can just do it by freehand. So I mean, I quite often just do it freehand. I say, okay, that looks like that should be vertical, yeah. Now, as I release this second line, it will rejig the image so that both of those lines are vertical. Watch. Boom. Yeah. You'll see that? So if I undo that, yeah, and I draw that second line again, and I undid it by just doing Control or Command and Z, Control Z or Command Z, okay? So then, boom. And you see now it's made them both vertical, okay? You can also apply horizontal lines. So if we wanted to say that this part of the street here should be horizontal, okay, then you can, so you could draw that line and say, right, that should be horizontal, and it makes it horizontal. And if you didn't get it quite right, then grab one of those little squares on each end of the line and reset where the line is, and it'll make it horizontal. So it keeps the verticals vertical, and you can have up to 2 horizontal lines. Okay, so that's good for squaring off. Now there is a let me come to my master images for Lightroom Step-By-Step. Where are my master images? Oh, they're just in here. Okay, I have somewhere in here a painting from, I think, the Quai d'Orsay. How can I find that? Maybe I can put in Paris in my text search. Okay, that's not giving me what I wanted. I thought I had a painting image in here. Maybe it's in print photos. So let me go down to print photos, pictures, print photos, text. Now those are all Penny's paintings. They're not the paintings I want. So I want Paris. I think I was shooting in the Musée Quai d'Orsay. Just having a quick search. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so there's all my Paris shots. It's not giving me what I want. Okay. What I'm trying to show you here is go to the complete catalog there. I want to show you what you would do with transform. Let's say you're in a stately home and you want to take a shot of a painting of some kind. Okay, because I know I've got some. Bum, bum, bum. Those are all pennies. Those are all pennies. I'm just looking for a framed painting here. Bum, bum, bum. Oh, these will do. Okay, so there we are. I've taken this shot and it's not square. Yeah. So imagine that's a painting on the wall. This one looks like one of April's that's on the floor or whatever. She's been doing some swirly stuff. Okay. So let's go into D for develop. Yeah. And that file can't be found. Wonderful. G for grid. Yeah, no, those are all uneditable. Here we are. Okay. So here's a shot of a lady by her painting. Okay. D for develop. No, that one's not connected either, because I'm not connected to the network drive. Let me connect to the network drive very quickly. While I'm doing that, Mark, ask me a question.
So we've just got one from Alison. Thanks very much, Alison. Saying if I use vertical transform, you lose, some of the sides to white. Is that just a loss of pixels? And we talked in the past about that kind of limitation, didn't we?
And it is. And it is because you are kind of getting rid of images, getting rid of pixels by cropping. Okay, so here's one of Dana in front of her in front of her image, and I edited this the other day. Okay, so that was the shot straight out of camera. Okay, so what I can do now is I can come into transform and I can say, okay, this I want the picture to be vertical. So I grab that corner and then I go down to the other corner there. Yeah. And I say that should be vertical. And this should be vertical. So that's made my verticals vertical. And now I want the picture to be square as well. Okay, so then I'm going to square the picture up by going across at the bottom. And at the bottom, I'm going to take the bottom line and I'm going to make that vertical, that square as well. Okay, so now that's perfectly square. Yeah. So now this is the done button. To get rid of all these lines, you just click here on the done button. Okay, so you see we've lost a little bit of the edges, and this is the problem when you're shooting and you're going to shoot to transform. Yeah, you're going to lose some of your edges. So always shoot wider than you need. Yeah, you can bin those pixels. They're not the key thing. This one's just about acceptable. We're pretty much right on the edge of the picture. Yeah, but it's not ideal, and so this one, there was a bit more space on the left-hand side of the picture. Stuff like that. I mean, it's a pretty crappy shot anyway, isn't it? Dana probably wouldn't be very happy with me, but if I was going to straighten it up, that's how I would do it. Now in Lightroom, you can't add extra bits on the end. We have the generative kind of addition stuff. Photoshop will let you do that. Photoshop will let you extend the canvas and kind of fill it in with white or whatever. You can't do that right now in Lightroom. Okay, so right, so let's come back to the member images and let's just see whether we've got any kind of cityscape shots or whatever. Well, so that one, okay. So let's say that we wanted to make that wall kind of straight so that it was kind of straight on, okay. It doesn't really differ a whole lot from using a tilt shift lens. This is just after the fact. And with a tilt shift lens, you kind of get what you see when you capture the image, Neville, rather than kind of later on. But effectively, you're doing the same thing. So here we are. We'll go into D for develop. I think it's Shift and T gets you into transform. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So if I'm in the grid view and we've chosen this shot, okay, if I want to go straight into transform, Shift T. And that's taken us into develop, and it's opened up the transform tool. Okay. So now I'm going to draw a horizontal line along the top there, and another one along the bottom there. And all of a sudden, I've got my perfect horizontals. And then if I want to, I can pull in a couple of verticals as well. So you don't have to do the verticals first. You can do the. Now you see here. Let's just make that wrong. Now I can grab that handle and I can say, okay, well, let's make the line parallel to the edge of the image. So you don't have to kind of run it right down the side of the image, as long as you're saying what should be vertical. Okay. And then again, on this side, I can just draw the line. I don't have to be right on the edge. And then I can just like by eye say that should be vertical. Oh. So now now look what's happened at the top of the image. We've got those white lines here and here. Yeah. So you're now going to have to kind of, if you do constrain to crop, yeah, it will get rid of those white areas automatically. If you undo the constrain to crop, you can come back before you did it. And now you have to kind of then open up, say, the crop tool and pull that in, to wherever is best. But I mean, I might say, well, I don't really care about the trees. Yeah. So I'm going to crop there. And then I'm going to see, can I crop without killing the dog off? No, it doesn't look like it. So, then you'd have to say, well, what am I going to do with the dog? Am I going to do a generative remove on the dog, make him an ex-dog? Or am I? Yeah. So that's a tricky one. Or you're going to have to drop that into Photoshop and then just do a fill on there. And because that's now not even on the photo canvas, I don't think we can even do like a clone. Because, you might think, well, can I clone in part of this pavement down in this corner? But I don't think we can. Let's try it. Let's try it and see. Yeah, you see, it's not part of the original canvas. So we can, this is the source, that's the destination. It won't fill that in. So in Lightroom, you can't fill in stuff that wasn't on the original canvas. You'd have to go to Photoshop to do that if you wanted to leave the dog intact. Yeah. So if you're not into drowning puppies, then I'm afraid Photoshop is where you need to go on that.
Yeah. We all do want to protect dogs, by the way, especially sausage dogs. Thanks to the photographer. I just put this in the chat. Thanks to the photographer who put this in. I can really see why you took this image, and I would crop it to the exact same point that Joe has done as well, actually. But yeah, I mean, I know we could talk all day long about cropping, but I would have gone for a very, very similar approach. But yeah, well,
you might look at that and say, well, actually, now let's kind of do the overlay thing and go for, say, the thirds lines. Okay. So probably want these two on the thirds line. So what are we going to do? Well, let's just sacrifice the dog's feet. Okay. We will just come up a bit. Where are we? Oh, there's my crop here. Yeah, so that's going to kind of be the roof. And then do I really want to chop this one off? Or do I want to kind of like even these two up maybe so that we've got that tight on this side and we've got this one tight on this side, and that makes it an even 5. And we've still got them walking into negative space. Yeah, we've got that movement. Or do we want to kind of, have that? Because this is a bit of a pattern break, isn't it? Because you're cutting it. So I would probably even that out like that. I think that's probably what I would do. Maybe even come right up to the edge, alpha crop again. Now just come right, and then I haven't got that white line on the very edge. I'm just coming into the black of the image. You see I've got that white line just there, just coming just a tad more. And now those images are kind of right on each end. So yeah, having to think about that stuff. This is the story that you're telling then, isn't it? And you're eliminating anything that's distracting from the image. And this
it takes it out of context. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm ever so sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. It takes it out of context because then you've removed it from what initially looked like a park setting with trees and so on into a more sort of gritty urban setting. So yeah, I think the power of cropping is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then you can kind of play with, do I want this in black and white or not? Stuff like that. Yeah. And I mean, you've got other options as well then. Okay. So, I mean, if we come back into crop, let's play. So, what if we just do that? Yeah. There's a different one. Yeah. And just get rid of the dog completely. So, now, I mean, you might not like the fact that we've kind of chopped the legs halfway through, or maybe we just give a little bit of a grounding to the base. So we've got that darker layer at the top. We've now got a slightly darker layer at the bottom. Yeah. So you can play with the crop and see what it gives you. I like the gritty, kind of graffiti. So maybe that's something. Yeah. So again, try these different options. See, and also when you're cropping, always try a few different crops. Try a square crop. Okay. So what if we just did a square crop and just had, I don't know, maybe that's a very different crop. Now, we need some negative space. So maybe we kind of have something like that. Yeah.
Vicky's just dropped it. Sorry, Victoria's just dropped in a question and said, and this is the same question we've had before, so I cannot remember the answer, which is my fault.
Absolutely. Yeah.
About the histogram and whether it's affected by the crop.
Yeah, watch the histogram. Yeah. So as you crop stuff out, so if we cropped right in and just had some dark pixels, right? So that's all kind of pretty dark, isn't it? There, yeah. Or put the dark of the tree in. Yeah. There's the histogram. It's just the dark pixels. Yeah. But if we put just the white of the sky in, there's completely different set of pixels. Yeah. So if we go back out to our 16:9 kind of wide crop or whatever, something like that, I don't want to do that. Okay, my angle's wrong. Undo, Control Z. Okay, so let's open up my crop to 16:9 because I'm going to show this on a widescreen TV. So I want 16:9, and then I'm going to bring that down to there. Yeah, and maybe I'm just going to kind of see what I can do. Right, so I'm going to bookend this now 16:9 with two little bits to show the movement through the frame. I can keep my dog in now, I think, pretty much. Yeah, that's fine. So there's a 16:9 crop, something like that. And now we've got our histogram. And then you'd come, once you've done your transform now you'd come into your basic. You'd do your shift and double click on whites, shift and double click on blacks, and that sets your white and your black point. So that you've kind of not blowing any highlights, but you've got detail, and then maybe pull the highlights back a little just to get a bit more of that detail off the white of the boards. Yeah, I'd probably pull the blacks down a little bit more as well, and then I would be punching up clarity and texture to get that really gritty street look going. Yeah. And if I took it into Nick, I might kind of, apply a bit of structure, or I might come down into effects now and just do a little bit of a corner vignette just to kind of focus the eye here. Now you see the corner vignette in this isn't going to work ever so well because it's focusing the eye here, and I will really want to focus the eye here. So what do you do instead of using the vignette down in effects? You use a radial filter. Pop in a radial filter, focus it on the bit that you want, which is here. Okay, so now Yeah, that's where I want the eye to be. So what I want to do is darken everything else off. So I invert the radial filter and then darken everything else so that my radial filter, show the H key. Okay, so there's my radial filter, make it a bit wider. So that's my pool of light, if you like, that I want my subjects to be in. I'll include the dog. Okay, so you've now set your pool of light, and now you can bring the exposure down in the rest of the image to just subtly, focus in on the radial filter, and then come in on that radial filter and maybe just put a little bit more subtlety on the fade. Yeah. So this is the storytelling with light, isn't it? Don't know, thoughts on that, Mark?
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, you and I are really similar in these kind of things. But yeah, I find this really, really fascinating. But on the cropping, interesting how different people approach it. I might have gone for 5 images as well, with a line around the edge, actually. So it's really fascinating as to what, but what I've started to do, and I'm sure, I hope other people do this as well, is I do an edit, I create it, go and have a cup of tea, come back, make a virtual copy, and then start again doing something else. And one of the tips that someone gave, and I know you've mentioned this as well in the past, is about flipping an image upside down so that you can see around the edge to start to look for anything that might then affect it. And I've started to do that a lot as well. So yeah, there's so many different things I adopt now. Yeah.
I mean, on this one, I kind of come back to this now, and I look at it and I think, well, yeah, that it's darker here, and this is much brighter behind them. So what I might do with that radial crop, is I might come into that now and say, well, I like the brightening that's been applied to the subjects, but I kind of just want the brightening applied to the subjects and not kind of the rest of the image. So I would probably then kill that one off, just delete that, and say, okay, that's not quite what I was looking for. Yeah. So instead, I'm going to do a subject selection. Okay, now that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's pulled out different, it's pulled out some of the people. So that's not going to work. Yeah. So in this case, let's do objects. Okay, and let's see whether I can just get it to choose her. Yeah, and it's not done a brilliant job of choosing her. Yeah. So I might have to kind of spend a little bit more time doing that as well. Yeah. But I would try and maybe apply some brightening to them because they're quite dark.
And Peter's just sort of taken us back to a previous session and talking about intersect masking, because actually you could then look at intersect masking. It's a great idea, Peter.
And it's a great idea. And I was thinking of that. But again, the problem now is, so what do we do? Do we intersect with the background maybe? So let's intersect with background. Yeah. Look, now we've got the mask, and the intersection is everything pretty much. But you see, again, it's picked out these as subjects, hasn't it? So it's very difficult to isolate those people from these people on the posters as well. If we invert that, now you see, look. So we're going to have to then clean that up. So we'd now have to subtract. Maybe with an object, we'd need to say, okay, try subtracting. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And then with an object again, let's try subtracting what isn't the girl. Getting there. Yeah. So you'd have to tweak that a little bit more. And once you tweaked that, then you could brighten them up separately to the rest of the image. Yeah. So yeah, this would be a very, very difficult masking exercise.
I've learned with street photography, finding people isn't your friend. but all the rest of the masking tools are phenomenally good.
Yeah.
It is a bit tricky with street, especially with this kind of street where you've got lots of advertising boards and so on as well. Yeah, great shot though. Great shot.
It was super shot. Yeah, I mean, but don't forget the object tool. When you are trying to select people who are against something else, I mean, here the object is fairly clear. Yeah, it's not against a hoarding or whatever. But if the subject mask didn't work very well, yeah, then use an object mask. And if you use an object mask and just draw around, the image, yeah, it'll normally make a pretty good job of picking out that person.
Joe, while we're on this one, Joe, I'm sorry, I think that's twice I've interrupted you. While we're on this one, would it be worthwhile having a look at the transform options? Because obviously we've got a bit of sort of leaning back, haven't we, on this image? It'd be interesting to look at the transform options as to what
Right.
impact that makes as well. Sorry, I was just thinking about it on this
No,
one.
great idea. Yeah, yeah. So again, very tall sculpture here. The head is kind of further away from us than the feet. So one is it's straight that way. Okay. And we can do that with a crop tool. We can just rotate it slightly. Okay, so that it's straight like that. Yeah. And look at the base of the plinth. Yeah. And we can use the plinth there to kind of align with one of the grid lines. Yeah, because you can see that the grid line superimposed on that plinth shows that we're not square there. So maybe we square up with the plinth, something like that. Yeah. So that's one thing. But then if we're in the transform, we've got these manual options for transform as well. Okay. So the vertical one allows you to kind of, imagine there's a line going through the middle of the image halfway up. Yeah. So we're kind of like rotating that image around that central line. So that gives us a little bit of possibility to maybe just bring the head forward and the feet back a little. Okay. And give it a slightly better set of, so is that what you were thinking of, Mark, was just bringing it forward?
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's less obvious when you're not looking at a building where you can see those leaning lines. When I first looked at this, I thought that's a lovely picture, no problems with it. And then I thought, actually, I wonder if a bit of transforming would change that. But it changes the dynamic considerably, doesn't it?
So that's that vertical option. I mean, we've got the capability of rotating in here as well. Yeah, we can change the aspect ratio. And sometimes when you're using a wide angle lens, this one can be quite useful, because with a wide angle lens, let's say you've got mountains a long way away in the background. Yeah. Well, if you've done some kind of a transform on that, the mountains flatten. they get stubby. So if you come back in here then and then just stretch them out a bit more like that, it kind of gives them a better aspect ratio. But sometimes you have to come in and do that manually. Okay, so we could change the aspect ratio a little bit there. The scaling is just zooming in and out basically, so you can see what you've got now. So you might scale it up to something like, or scale it out to that, something like that. Yeah. So now you've got more capability of coming in and doing a recrop and stuff. So I'd probably, and then the X and Y offset, just move your left and right and up and down. Yeah. So that's what they do. So these are useful tools that a lot of people very often just overlook. So I would say done now. That's the done tool. Okay. And then I'd come back into crop, half a crop. And now I would come in with probably my 10x8 and say, okay, there's my 10x8. Can I do a 10x8? I can't, because we're going to chop his head off. So we're going to have to go probably 4x3. Yeah. 4x6, which is the normal kind of taller crop. There we are. And let's do a tall crop like that. And now we've got an image that's straight. We've got the head the same size as the feet, and it's within a normal crop. Yeah.
Fantastic. There are no other questions, actually, I think, Joe. I think we've got through everything. Just a couple of sort of general ones, but we had a question from Neville first, a while ago, but I know we're going to be covering the print module as we go on, so a little bit later. So this may be something that I can hold on to then. But Neville was asking, when we were talking about resizing images, about whether the print module interpolates the image if necessary, so resizes it if necessary to print. But that may be something that we cover in that session as well.
The module itself doesn't, because when you're out in printing, it's the number of pixels that you've actually got in your image. So if you're going to print, then you export the image that you're going to use for print with the right number of pixels first. And then you're setting the print module, you're setting up what the print looks like in terms of borders and, all that kind of stuff. Using printers to upsize an image rather than Lightroom or Photoshop or Topaz is probably the least good way of doing it. There's a much better grammatical way of saying least good, isn't there?
Yeah, there probably is. Somebody's talking proper around here somewhere. I'm sure.
Proper English, yeah. Yeah. So that's that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else on transform. Let me just have a very quick squiz through the handout and make sure that I'm giving you everything that I was hoping I would give you. No, I think I've maybe closed it down.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for all those people who have come for all of the sessions, stay with us all the way through. We very rarely have anybody having to leave halfway through, so it's lovely to have people all the way. Thank you very much.
Handout 11. Let me just have a quick. I'll move it off the screen. There we are. Let's just see. Is there anything that I wanted to cover? We've done the crop overlays, resizing for the web. Yeah. I mean the resizing, when we were doing the resizing for print, resizing for display, and resizing for the web are kind of different beasts. When you resize for print, it's all about dots per inch that your printer's going to need to print to the size that you want. Okay, and we went through those calculations earlier on. With the web, the old monitors were 72 dots per inch. Okay, that doesn't actually hold true anymore. So what I normally, when I'm sizing now for use on computer screens, I normally go to 3000 pixels. Yeah. A 4K screen is 2160 pixels wide. Okay. And it's, if it's a standard wide screen, 4K screen, it's 2160 by 1080, I think, or is it 1920 by 1080? You can look the numbers up. So in that case, I would output to fit the screen. Yeah. And 3000 pixels long edge is normally going to give you plenty of resolution, even for a high res, 4K TV screen or something like that. If you're sizing for the web, most web pages default to 1200 pixels wide. Okay, so you're very rarely going to need to size an image wider than 1200 pixels for use on a web page. And if you do size it to like 2500 pixels or 3000 pixels, the image will take longer to load on the web page, and that's not what you want normally. You want your web pages to load nice and quick, and the bigger your image is, the slower it will generally be loading on your web page. So that's something to be aware of. Okay, you always try and size your images to the smallest size possible to fit your web page, because it will improve the speed of your web page. So yeah.
Super, thank you.
What if you've cropped it all already? Okay, Chris. Well, if you've already cropped it too small, then you either go back to your original raw file, yeah, and crop it out a bit wider, or you can export it with bigger dimensions, and then Lightroom will just add in some pixels and interpolate it, and it'll generally do quite a good job. Or you can use something like Topaz Gigapixel, which is a specialized kind of upscaling engine. And I use Topaz Gigapixel, a fair bit with very small cropped images to get them up to, 5,000-6,000 pixels or whatever that I want them to be. And it works beautifully because it sharpens and denoises and upscales all in one go. So if you're going to do a lot of that work, then Gigapixel is probably one of the better options in town. Yeah.
And on that point, actually, we've had at least one dedicated session on Topaz, haven't we, Joe? So I could put a link in
Yeah.
for people who are interested in that, because we had a full session with Joe about those.
Yeah, and I mean
Brilliant.
we probably need to redo that at some point in the future, because I mean certainly photo AI has come through in leaps and bounds since then, and gigapixel as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. To keep adding it to the list, Joe. 2027 is what I'm planning for now. I'm still here. Okay, I think that is everything then. If anybody would like to put any final comments in the chat for Joe, please do, and I will share this with them afterwards. And it is just lovely to get feedback.
Yeah, and thank you so much, everybody, for so many questions. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's lovely to prepare these sessions and me to go through my spiel and stuff, but I love it so much more when the sessions become kind of the Q&A.
Yeah.
I can show you the stuff, maybe not in the order that I thought I was going to show you it, but we've covered everything I wanted to, and I think we've answered most of your questions. So you know, great. And having Mark kind of wrangling the questions when I don't see stuff in the chat just makes it so much easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, and also what's interesting is some questions that get asked. I think, God, what a brilliant question, you know, and I hadn't thought about that, but what a brilliant question. So, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I will link to everything on the handouts and so on, and the web link for uploading pictures. If anybody has a problem with uploading, just email them to me or Joe and we'll add them. That's fine. But yes, otherwise.
What are we doing next? Mono.
Next time. Oh, great. Mono. Oh, hey.
Mono in step 12. So if anybody has any images that they want me to process in mono, send me the color raw file. Don't send me the mono one. Send me the color raw file, and then I will process them up into mono and give you some ideas.
Yeah. Fantastic. Look forward to it. Thank you. And everybody, Joe, we will see you again then. Thank you very much.
All right. See you, everybody. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.